Good afternoon to everybody that's here. This is our topic this month is the new normal, cybersecurity essentials for business owners. And again, I'm Paul Millenbach. I've been involved in this a couple of times previously. And today we have Lindsey Mead, who is an attorney here at the firm. Lindsey, why don't you introduce yourself and describe what your practice is and what you're going to talk about today?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Hi, everybody. I'm Lindsey. My practice area mostly focuses on business law, corporate contracts, and intellectual property matters. But lately, I've been tapping into businesses' use of artificial intelligence in that space. So my involvement there has really kind of triggered and sparked my involvement in the cybersecurity area. So happy to be here and talking with you, Paul. Thanks.
Thank you today for taking the time, Lindsey, and for everybody who participating today. Certainly appreciate it. We're going to talk about cybersecurity. What's kind of relevant is the fact that October is actually National Cybersecurity Month, in case anybody didn't know that. So can you provide us kind of an outline of what the topics are that you're going to discuss today, and then we can go from there?
Yeah. So I tried to structure this as like 3 different steps that business leaders could take to be proactive in the event of a cybersecurity disaster. And the 3 categories within that I would focus on first include employee training and what businesses can do at the employee level. Second, considering technology access and protection controls that are already in place, or if not in place, how you can bolster that. And third, which is, where attorneys and other tech experts can come in, is offering cybersecurity event solutions in the event of a data breach. So yeah, that's kind of how I've structured this for us today.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the first item,
Sure.
the sort of training that's provided that you recommend.
Yeah, I think investing in cybersecurity training with management and employees is something I'd recommend for every business. And I think in some regards, there probably is something already in place. And it's going to depend on the industry of your organization, the depth of training in terms of what software you have available, and in general, really considering the cybersecurity training schedule you have set with your staff. So on the schedule piece, thinking about the regularity of that, whether it be monthly, quarterly, or semi-annual sessions, having some type of set schedule in place is the best way to ensure that education is prioritized, because these get-togethers can tackle any type of cybersecurity topic that's relevant to the organization and the industry, whether that be, the current common cyber threats that are discussed in the news, determining best practices for your employees, internal policy updates if you've made a change to something that could impact data privacy or security, and mandatory refreshers on things that are already in place. Either way, some type of touching base in person or an automated comprehensive training content is going to be really valuable and touch the employees that really could put the organization at risk of some type of incident happening, to kind of guide their behavior in the workplace. But in the case where something topical has occurred in a training session, or if a training session is not available, even sending an email update can prove to be really valuable on critical topics, and something that we find really beneficial. Like something we even do as a firm is constant content update on phishing awareness. And that topic's always going to be relevant no matter the industry, discussing suspicious links, unexpected attachments, improper URLs, and with incorrect greetings or grammar, spelling in emails. All of these are going to be telltale signs that even a quick email refresher could serve as that training component for your employees and keep them informed.
Have you found in your practice that clients or other contacts have indicated to you that they have difficulty with training, getting their employees to listen or pay attention, to attend those type of events, or respond to those, or even view those emails? And if so, what can you recommend that employers do to help that?
Yeah, I think I do. I think this is an issue for everybody. And I think it's an issue even when we put ourselves in the position of the end user, whether that be of a different software or at work. Any type of training or clicking through the privacy policy, it is difficult with these topics to get people interested. But when you make your training in an event, something that people can come together and do, whether that be a lunch sit down and you bring in an outside tech expert, or you make it interactive in some way to ensure that people are clicking through something, comprehending it. Sometimes the email isn't always the best way to go, but depending on what's going on in your organization at times, sometimes it is. If it's the quickest way to get people alerted to something, hey, we see this phishing email going around, do not respond, here's what it looks like. Those quick reminders can really prevent a more catastrophic data incident from happening.
Do some companies make the training mandatory?
Yes, and I think I would recommend having some type of set schedule in place. Like we said, whatever makes sense for your organization, whether that be, semi-annually or bi-weekly or different for every group. If you have groups dealing with more protected and secure data, maybe more frequent refreshers for them. It's really going to depend on the type of data that's relevant to the organization, how frequently you should be checking in.
And you mentioned that there was a second focus of your talk today. What was the second one? It was involved with technology access controls, I believe?
Yes, so some other concepts, some ideas to put in place in terms of access control and protection measures. I think one access control measure that's probably impacted us all, whether it be at work or, like I said, through a third party, is multi-factor authentication. That's really risen in recent years, and especially in the remote workplace and work from home era we're in. MFA is a very common feature, and it can protect your business's cloud data and confidential information, even when employees aren't logging on at their workstation. So an MFA integration usually requires, if you're not familiar, two devices, such as trying to log in on your computer and clicking an authentication code or typing in a number on your phone to approve some type of login. But another common format are there different apps out there like Google Authenticator and Microsoft Authenticator. But implementing this in your existing systems can really lock down access to business data that cyber criminals may have easier access to without that two-prong protection system in place. Because sometimes, realistically, it isn't always possible to integrate really high-tech systems into your pre-existing softwares, but MFA has proven to be potentially an easier tool to really add in, and to kind of keep in mind the golden rule is the more sensitive the data, the higher the protection measure. So keeping that in mind with MFA is critical. But another option that we're seeing our clients implement, and probably already are implemented at a lot of the organizations of the folks here today, is password policies with employees. We have it at our firm, some type of password requirement, and even MFA features can really feel annoying as an end user when you have to change it so often, when you're trying to come up with new things to remember, the new password that you just had to change. I understand the frustration with that, and it impacts us all. But ultimately, from an employer's perspective, it really is a great way to protect your workplace, and changing the features of that, the complexity of the passwords, maximum and minimum length, character requirements, reuse limits, expiration intervals, all these different types of things are really going to knock out the at-risk, weak passwords and promote data protection.
The multi-factor authentication, I've never heard that before. So could you describe that a little bit more in terms of what that would be? It seems to me that, and I think you alluded to that, as you might get a little resistance from your employees on that. It seems like it would be very difficult to do, but can you explain how difficult or how simple that is?
Sure. I don't know if I necessarily think it is difficult. I think it's just another feature that I think can often irritate folks, much like the password protection policy is because it requires two forms of authentication to approve that you, in my case, Lindsey Mead, are the person logging in. So it would function like this. You sit down at your computer or laptop, you type in your password, and in order to officially approve that login, you'd also get a code or some type of button texted to your phone that then says, yes, this is Lindsey Mead trying to log into this server, or even just to your home database, and you'd approve that. I don't know if I think it's difficult. It's more just, the reminder or the frustration of having one other thing you have to do to log in. But again, I can't emphasize enough for employers, those little things do have to be implemented to ensure, some type of protection of the data. So with our phones always by our side, I think it is a relatively easy but effective way to consider locking down sensitive data.
Okay. And in terms of things like backing up your organization's data, is that an important factor as well?
Yes, so those two things that I talked about, the password policies and MFA, that's really at the employee level. But at the employer level, backing up data to your, secured systems is crucial, and it can really ensure quick restoration in the event of a cyber incident. But also ensuring whatever the composition of your IT team is at your organization is aware of and readily able to monitor your business's systems for its vulnerabilities, its weak points, suspicious data. That's going to really lower the risk of an attack. And if it were to happen, the response plan after that. So, whether that be through a firewall system, hands-on assessment, having some type of people on your team dedicated to monitoring the system as a whole of your organization is really critical too.
Thank you. What about so where do like lawyers and other cybersecurity professionals come in this whole picture?
Yeah, so IT experts, everything is very nuanced in what that could look like. But an attorney's perspective here is helping you with some type of incident response plan in the case of a cybersecurity incident, and also developing comprehensive policies internally for your organization, including a cybersecurity policy, response plan, and AI use policy for your internal use to distribute amongst employees or any type of third parties you work alongside with. And at a more general level, attorneys, even in my practice group here in the business law group, they're specialized in contract review and can help you identify the risks and any type of vendor technology agreement you may be considering to grow your business or the tools available to your employees. So an incident response plan becomes relevant in the case of a data breach. Essentially, it's a plan you create before that incident happens that helps you outline the steps you would take to respond to such an incident. So it would be identifying how it happened, containing the risk with immediate next steps for the team that's tasked to respond to it, recovering from the breach in a compliant and proper manner, and then conducting some type of post-event analysis, even if that's just internal with your organization, to avoid it happening again in the future. It's really cause and effect and remedy. And so having an attorney a part of that team to help you develop the plan, ensure compliance, especially with legal requirements from the start, and liability concerns along the way, is really establishing some type of protocol for you to feel in control in the event of a data breach, because it can feel obviously really high stakes, and it is. And having to inform your stakeholders, impacted individuals, regulatory agencies, whomever is affected, can be stressful, and you want to make sure you're responding in a way that is compliant. So I think having an attorney help you draft that can be really critical, as well as the internal policies that you have amongst your employees. So a cybersecurity policy for a business will look different depending on the industry. And I've said that multiple times, but it's true, because it defines the rules and practices for protecting your business's digital property. And that's going to include acceptable use by your employees, other end users, if you have a website, for example, access control, data protection measures, incident reporting procedures, all of that. But it's critical here to connect your staff to the people they should be reporting this behavior to, because it's one thing to receive that suspicious email. It's another to know, who do you forward it to, who can help, and what do I do? And have that information readily available so high risk threats can be dealt with immediately by the people best tasked to handle it. And an AI use policy is really similar. It's exactly as described. It's going to help your organization inform your employees of how they can utilize AI and prioritize the protection of the confidential data that you don't want distributed through AI tools and features. So attorneys can really add value by helping clients, employers, whomever draft these policies, gain an understanding of the needs and staying up to date with the relevant changes in law.
And is that something that you do? Is that what you do on a regular basis? Provide such things as the incident response plans and discuss that with the employers?
Yes, yeah, we have helped clients in my group with that at length, as well as I mentioned earlier, contract review is something that I think even for people not involved in the tech space or organizations that are not, dealing with quite a sophisticated software, when you're bringing in a vendor that does, having an attorney review those contract provisions that are critical, like insurance, liability, limitations of that liability, indemnification, all these core provisions that are central to any contract in this space when we're dealing with considering adding an AI tool in or dealing with a third-party vendor that's going to protect really sensitive client or patient data in the healthcare space. All of that is really critical to ensure you have someone on your team that knows what the particular compliance requirements are for that industry and the type of data it's holding.
Have you found that in your practice that a lot of insurance companies are requiring employers to have an incident response plan, or organizations, I should say, to have an incident response plan?
I think it's certainly a beneficial thing to have in place. I have noted the increase in cybersecurity insurance protection being a requirement depending on the industry. And whether that be a requirement from your insurance providers or not, I think people are seeing it as a way that an organization is proactively considering how they're going to respond in the worst case scenario. So yeah, I think it has pros no matter what.
Would you recommend that organizations obtain a policy of cybersecurity if available to them?
Yes, again, I think it does depend on the organization and knowing what data you're handling, and who your end users are. But if you're collecting credit card information, for example, if you're an online retail store, how are you storing that data? How are you protecting it? Social security numbers, if you're housing some type of information, not just of your clients, but your employees, how are you protecting that? An incident response plan and internal policies are all going to guide not only your employees' handling of that data, but your management, how you're storing it, to protect from a cybersecurity incident. So I think all of those policies are really something organizations should keep in mind to guide that use.
Okay, and is that part of your practice too, is to review the policy to see if it's going to cover losses that would be sufficient coverage for losses?
Yeah, we would help draft that and from start to finish kind of walk through the organization to address its vulnerabilities, it's the data it's holding, any weaknesses in the current tools you have in place to monitor your data privacy. Because, if you've employed a third-party software, firewall system, some type of monitoring provision, checking that contract again and seeing who's liable in the event of a data security breach, if that software goes down, having a lawyer's eyes on that can help you stay informed.
You had mentioned a little bit about AI and AI possible hackers. How are hackers utilizing AI?
Yeah.
That's something you could expand upon a little bit.
Yeah, I would say I'm most comfortable in the AI space and how we're seeing that evolve, even though it's all completely brand new and there's really no precedent there, which in itself has risks and concerns. But I think while AI can be great to help detect cybersecurity risks, it can also be used to cause it. And I think that's what we're seeing. Most of the coverage and fear in our media is about how is AI going to strengthen these cybersecurity attacks and potentially make it unavoidable from, an employer or organization's perspective to avoid something like that happening. And due to the efficient large data set processing of AI tools, hackers can use AI to craft really convincing phishing schemes, for example. AI could be used to generate a really highly personalized phishing communication. It could look like it's coming from a friend or a coworker because that AI, tool, if it has a large enough data set, can scan your digital footprint, social media profile, target you with specific things that feel of interest to you or with fake names of people that you feel you would respond to. It makes it so much more likely when it can be so sophisticated that you're going to respond. And whether that be, through a link, an email, a text, any of that can then trigger and cause some type of malicious incident or breach, which is scary for employers that it can be that easy. But, I don't like to focus too much on what can go wrong with AI because I also think as this space is evolving, AI tools can be used to detect cyber attacks too, or suspicious activity. Like, for example, an AI-driven security system or a system with a feature in it that includes AI monitoring could recognize immediately abnormal behavior and user activity because it is able to function so much more quickly and efficiently than someone scanning line by line data. So for example, think about mailed login or multiple failed login attempts. That would be an easy thing that could be triggered by an AI tool, and having that a part of your, security assessment, allowing it to alert your team. It's possible that an AI tool could also be just as beneficial to detect a data breach incident. So like anything else, it can be used for good and bad, but I think we can see in this space particularly the bad much more than the good, and that's scary because it's just so unknown, and especially with cybersecurity and data privacy concerns, it's a big deal.
Right. Well, thank you. There are a couple of questions that are in the chat.
Sure.
First one is MFA, which we talked about a moment ago, to personal cell phones. Does that put the employer's phone at any data breach risk or FOIA able?
Interesting. I cannot speak to FOIA, if you're using MFA, if your phone could be able to be accessed through that. In terms of the security of breach risk, that's completely going to depend on the app or the MFA tool you're implementing. So most organizers that have created an MFA tool have some type of privacy policy. They're an organization themselves servicing your organization. There's some type of contract in place. You don't just use any type of online tool. I would not recommend that in terms of, keeping cybersecurity at the forefront, and having really detailed assessment of how they are describing their protecting data and how that contract lays out liability is going to answer that question, because it's really going to be specific to the tool. And I would recommend having close eyes on any, protection tool you're putting in place or trusting to protect your organization before you do.
All right, thank you. And the next question is, what are your thoughts on AI that runs on local machines, quote, local, within the organization that don't require an internet connection? One example would be GPT-4AI.
Yeah, I think Jeremy's talking about maybe ChatGPT's latest feature. I don't know a ton about that and can't speak to it, but I am aware of AI tools that are functioning solely for an organization. And the concept of that is it's oftentimes developed in-house, or other organizations can then ask for, market a tool to your organization to be functioning solely on your software. I think it sounds great. Unfortunately, with the AI space, we have no idea what the precedent for those types of tools looks like. And again, I can't stress enough, reviewing that contract with that vendor that's offering to develop that for you is going to be critical. Or if you're developing it in-house, making sure that you are considering your industry and the data privacy of your organization. For example, if not all employees in a healthcare setting are entitled to know every detail of every patient confidential information that may be in your system, there are risks at place even for a localized AI tool. So making sure that however you choose to protect your information, it is cognizant of what persons at our business are entitled to know that information, and keeping it limited, because you run the risks even within your own organization of giving too many people too much access. It's very roundabout, but again, some type of policy in place or plan can really help you break down that information, instruct your employees on what this looks like and how we use it. But I think as a concept, AI tools that aren't trained on every single thing available out in the web seems more compliant than something that could pull data from anything.
All right, thank you, Lindsey. We're almost out of time. I just want to maybe just wrap up, but just, I guess, if you could just summarize maybe just a couple of the key points that you think people would benefit from our discussion today, just in summary, that would be great.
Yeah, I would just reflect back on those 3 points we started with. 3 things I would have any organization keep in mind is reflecting on what your current employee training looks like. considering what access tools you have in place, whether it be password protection requirements, and then assessing whether you can strengthen those or add new tools to the set you already have in place to strengthen cybersecurity protection is going to be critical. And third, thinking about how attorneys like us can add value to your organization, and if not us, other IT professionals that can really help you come up with some type of incident response plan before a cybersecurity event happens, so then you can function off of that plan, or cybersecurity and AI use policies internally. All of that can really keep you feeling at least prepared in the event of a worst case scenario, like a data breach incident. So yeah, that's what I'd recommend. Thanks so much, Paul.
No, well, thank you very much, Lindsay. It was very informative for me, and hopefully for everybody else as well. And thank you very much for your time today. And go Tigers.
Go Tigers. Thanks so much, Paul. Bye, everybody.